Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Sargent. I'm trying to get the camera to focus on the label here. Let's take a look. Might be a bit optimistic. That reads 858HS is what we're looking at here. We have an 858HS padlock. Yeah, no doubt. There we go. 858HS padlock. Hardened steel. That's what the HS stands for in the part number. It's an 858 padlock with an HS option on the hardened steel shackle. And I don't actually, I don't believe that it's actually an upcharge for that. And you know, you may not want a hardened shackle. You may want the ability to cut that more easily. It could be an application where, you know, a lock keeps honest people honest, and you might want the ability to put a bolt cutter on it. I can imagine why that might be the case. There could be applications. So let's take some basic dimensional properties and we'll talk about this padlock. Overall length, height of the body, about 2 1/4. Overall width, about 1 7/8, I suppose. Maximum diameter of the body appears to be about 7/8. Now, the inside width of the shackle clearance, the width, I'm going to go with 1 inch, 1 inch wide. The shackle clearance when it's closed is another dimension that you see with padlocks all the time. Looks like it's also 1 inch. Yeah, so 7/8. We'll see what the catalog says. This has a component in the part number, the 60. That means something very specific. And I'm going to show you what that means. The other dimension that they give with padlocks is the shackle diameter. .347, so 11:30 seconds would be my guess. Something in that range. A lot of corporate advertising on there. Okay. So this is going to include instructions, which we're going to take a look at in a moment. So let's talk about what this padlock is, and we'll switch to the screen view, and we will look at the supporting information, the cut sheet, the instructions, some images and whatnot. So let's do that now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now let's get back to it. Okay, here's our padlock. Let's take a look at some photographs that we have of the item. Here's the box, the contents, the label that I just attempted to show, 60 option on the cylinder, 858 padlock, hardened steel. Okay. And continuing on, that's the back side of the body. Brass body, I should have mentioned that. Hardened shackle. Sargent, owned by Assa Abloy, a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation. Fun fact, Mr. Assa and Mr. Abloy, they got together many decades ago and said, hey, we should go in business together. Assa is known as a high-security cylinder platform. Abloy is also known as a high-security cylinder platform. Assa, when you think of Assa, when I think of Assa, I think of Schlage Primus. In fact, they were patented, those concepts were patented by the same individual. However, Abloy is a very different animal. If you want something that's exceptionally secure, look up Abloy ProTech. Images. The Protect cylinder is a series of rotating discs, and I know that I have one in my collection. I don't know much about picking locks in the sense of actually being able to speak in the same group of people that actually pick locks, but these are cuts that are on the edge of that key, and there are different depths, there are different angles, and there are a dozen, if not more. I don't recall how many discs are in the Protect or the Protect 2. It could be 15 or 16. But in terms of pick resistance, I would think the Abloy is really high on the chart. And if you want to be able to really prevent someone from cutting your keys, you might want to look into an Abloy Protect. I'm not an Abloy Protect, Abloy high security cylinder distributor. I distribute multi-lock. But I sure do have one of these in my collection. So let's get back to the images. Hardened shackle. That shackle unlocked. Going to be a couple of ball bearings that sit in there. That's how those work. That's the disposable core. That will allow you to install the unit, confirm that it works. This is the core removed. It simply slides out, ready to receive a cylinder. And that's the disposable, what would be called a disposable construction core. I wouldn't throw those out. I would keep them. If you work on Sargent even very infrequently, you might have a need for that in the future, because if you had to buy them, they're not free, so hang on to them. Now let's take a look at the instructions that are included. How to remove cylinder from the 758 and 858 padlock. Rotate the key to release the shackle. Then, once you get the shackle open, you'll be able to look down into, and I'll switch back to the camera view and show you this, you'll be able to release the set screw. Well, in the back of the Bible, there's going to be a small little hole that's drilled and tapped into, it's not the Bible, it's the cylinder retainer, forgive me. The cylinder retainer sits on top of the Bible, that's the Bible. Cylinder retainer will have a drilled and tapped hole. That would be normal. You wouldn't want to drill and tap into the back of the Bible itself, because you're going to lose some chambers. And I happen to be working on a job right now for a lock that I'm unfamiliar with called ZKT ECO. It's their AL20, and it comes with a track style high security cylinder. I don't know how high security it is, but a track style. Well, I'm not able to master key that, and the reason I have the lock here shipped to me from a client in Spain is that they want cylinders installed that can be master keyed. So I'm trying to determine if I've got cylinders to do it, and I believe I do. The point of me saying all of this is in the back of the Bible of this lock shipped to me from Spain is a drilled and tapped hole for a screw that holds it in. So that's how you'll be able to service the cylinder, and at that point it'll come out. These obviously take the large format standard Sargent cores. If you have an interchangeable core version, which obviously this is what we're dealing with, when you look at the 63 option, you'll use the control key to remove that. Fun fact, the Sargent interchangeable core cylinders, the control key rotates counterclockwise. Most rotate clockwise in my experience. Key pull position when you've got that rotated about 10 degrees counterclockwise. The 51, how to remove old style? Yeah, sure. So I don't. Maybe in the 1980s is when they switched from the old to the new style Sargent cores. I would imagine there must be a mountain's worth of the old style still out there, given the fact that Sargent's been in business since, you know, the 19th century. You know, meaning I'm not sure what decade in the 19th century, but Civil War era, if not before. So that's the instructions. Let's take a look at the cut sheet. Cylinder easily removed while in the unlocked position for rekeying. Available in the following single key sections: SR, UCR, and the following Keyway families. Obviously the L is the common, LA is the typical Keyway. in the Sargent. Easily rekeyed into Sargent master keyed systems, 6-pin standard cylinders. Shackle locked by dual ball bearings for extra security. I'm not a padlock expert, but I guess it would be true to say I know a little bit more about it. Here's the body, and here's the shackle. So literally in here is a ball bearing, and there's going to be a spring in here. And what happens is when you rotate the cylinder, I do believe there's a spring inside of there. I think I'd have to pull up a parts drawing, but what happens is when you turn the key and rotate the cam on the back, it's probably not a spring. It's probably a piece of metal that deflects or something that moves out of the way, where the ball bearings literally come out of the way. Because the key, and that's the function of a key, it removes a blockage. So the blockage is what forces the ball bearings to reside in here. And when the key is turned, the ball bearings can scoot out of the way, allowing certainly a spring down here pushing the shackle up. Those ball bearings are able to get out of the way. That's a relatively crude but somewhat accurate example. So this is, if you recall, this is an 858. There is a 758 on here. What's the difference? So a 758 is key retaining, key removable and locked position only. The 858 is non-key retaining. So what that retaining and non-key retaining means, when the 758 padlock is in the unlocked condition, you cannot remove the key. Whereas with the 858, you can leave that padlock locked or unlocked. Be mindful about what function actually best serves your needs. Do you never want to be able to leave the padlock unlocked? You might have a security gate at a perimeter of a military installation. And you would probably never want to leave that unintentionally unlocked. The point of the matter is, if you have key retaining, and you know you put the padlock back on, and you've got the key in your possession, well, you know it's locked. Meaning, if you've got the key in your possession, the only way you did that was to relock the padlock. Satin brass, it is a satin brass finish, solid one-piece construction, 2 by 2 1/4. That would probably be the width and the height. If you order a cylinder, it'll come with 2 standard cut keys, or however you specify. If you order the padlock and it comes with the cylinder, you're going to need to specify, obviously, the keyway that you want. Otherwise, they'll send the standard keyway, which is probably the LA. Shackle heights 1-inch standard. For 2-inch, specify the -2 suffix. And for 4-inch, specify the -4. All 11/32 diameter. That is the dimension I gave. Hardened steel. Shackle material. Stainless steel is standard. Hardened steel with the HS option. I don't know how many pounds of force it takes on a bolt cutter to cut either of those, but I'm going to think that the hardened steel is a greater value there. Shackle protected by rubber shields to prevent freezing in the winter. Now that is something that you may have noticed, and they are right here. Neat little feature that's on these Sargent padlocks. You don't see that in many other padlocks. At least I don't. Chain, you can opt for a chain. That would be nice. If you want to hook this to a piece of equipment, you probably want the chain that you can secure to the equipment. And this is how you order it. Your padlock part number. First of all, any prefixes, and I'll show you what those are in a moment. Shackle height, your shackle type, and with or without a chain. Okay. Now, our part number has a 60 in front of it, if you recall. So let's figure out what that is. We already know that we have a 60 and an HS and an 858. I may have that HS in the wrong place when it comes to how to order. Yeah, apparently I do. It should be cylinder prefix, part number, shackle height, and then the shackle option right there. That's how that should be. Okay. I think it's still clear, I imagine, what's needed. So let's figure out what that 60 stands for. Click on the link here to the manufacturer's page, and when that loads, fire up the full line product catalog. Now I happen to know that the actually what I'd like to do is not look at that. I'd like to look at the price list. Now you're not going to be able to open this because it's a protected document. But I'm going to, I want to show, the reason I'm pulling it up in the price list is because for me it's laid out easier with the prefixes. So we'll get to where we can find the 858. There we go. That's really not it. Ah, 858 padlock. Options. We are in the auxiliary lock section. So here's a list price for the 858. I'm going to say that the 758 is the same price. So we have a 60 option. Sargent large format, interchangeable, plastic, disposable construction core, no additional cost, at least at the time of this video. The installation instructions had a, I believe it was a 63 option and a 51 option. So let's look at those. 63 option, Sargent large format, IC core cylinder, includes master and grandmaster keying charge. So it's going to include an interchangeable core, a combinated interchangeable core. They don't indicate that any keys are included, and generally there would be, but be mindful of how many keys that you may need. And then the other one was the 51, the Sargent old style removable core. Okay. The point of the matter is you see all of the other cylinder options here, and most of these are listed as high security, whether it be the degree or it be the XC. I don't know if queso is a part of what can be stuffed into this padlock, etc. Construction keying is here. You can even toss Schlage C and E cylinders into there, or order it less cylinder. If you're an installation and you've got a bushel load of cylinders, order it LC and take that tiny D duct. But I wouldn't take the tiny D duct if you were going to eventually need the cylinder, because if you had to buy the cylinder, it's a lot more money. Let's switch back to the screen, to the camera view, and we'll wrap up this video. But before we do that, on that link to the manufacturer's page that we got to from here, I did want to point out, from here you can find all of the Sargent products we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, as well as a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to that full product catalog and a few dozen encyclopedic documents, meaning parts master list index, installation instructions, archival catalogs. If you want to see what Sargent was making in 1877, here's that catalog. And here's that Sargent catalog. 1877. I don't know how close to the beginning of Sargent this existed. There's no catalog number on this, catalog 1 or catalog 10. I forget the name of Mr. Sargent. It may have been James Sargent. When he set up shop in Connecticut, he needed very skilled, highly skilled workers, if not craftsmen. And the reason that there is such a large, by percentage, population of Italian folks in that part of Connecticut is because James Sargent, I believe it's James, went to Italy to recruit workers and brought, I don't recall, you know, it's published somewhere, but may have brought back 3 dozen Italian folks to work in the factory. And it's because of that it's said that there's such a large population of Italian folks. New Haven would be my guess is where it's approximately going to be. Fun fact, pizza is from Italy. It's from Naples, Italy, I think in the 16th or 15th century. And it is said that the best pizza in the United States is in Connecticut. Anyway, a neat catalog. Like I said, I don't know how close to the beginning of Sargent this is. My opinion, it's It's not too terribly far off. Okay, let's switch to the camera view and wrap up this video. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. So the name Sargent has been synonymous with high-quality builder's hardware for 150 years at a minimum, if not longer. And I personally enjoy Sargent a lot because their part numbers are, the way that they put their part numbers together is extremely logical. And while I find it later in my career difficult to remember all of the prefixes and the suffixes, because I didn't work with Sargent intensely early in my career and really never worked with it intensely. And that's why I gravitated towards the price list, because to me there's a preceding page and that's all of the prefix options that are there. But I like Sargent because they have such an utterly comprehensive listing of hardware. If there's a need for a piece of hardware for an application to exist in the world, Sargent very likely has it. Really good customer service folks, really good tech support people under the ASA Abloy umbrella. Sister companies to Sargent would be Medico and Corbin and Sargent and Rockwood and Pemco, and it goes on and on and on. If you have any questions on anything Sargent related, please feel confident that we'll be able to get the answer for you, etc. And if you have any questions about this here 858 HS60 padlock or any other Sargent product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.